welcome to the auditorium. I'm here. I'm Thorn, and I'm here with a special guest today. I have with me Kristof Bathory.
How's it going?
How's it been?
Good, good. Just very extremely busy.
Yes, yeah. I can understand that. It's getting that time of year where things are starting to happen and all at once.
Right.
So yeah, to get us started, tell us a little bit about who you're about, and yeah, if you want to give us a little bit of history, like how does this all get started? Like when did you first like feel like okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna start doing it?
Prior to establishing Dawn of Ashes, I was in various metal and hardcore bands throughout the 90s. Um, so I've been a professional musician ever since I was 15. And around 2001, I started DOA, or Dawn of Ashes. And at that time, I was very inspired by uh, black metal and
Mm-hmm.
industrial. I wanted to do a project that was mainly a industrial black metal project from the beginning. And I
Okay.
remember people heard the name Dawn of Ashes, they always said that they thought it sounded like a metal band.
Right.
Um, but then I got introduced to the industrial scene. I started going to clubs and I started hearing like Wumscut and some other bands, and I didn't really want to deal with other musicians, so I was like, I'm gonna try to create this sort of sound, and
Right.
I started making Dawn of Ashes as purely a solo act, just me writing industrial music, and then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then over the years it just evolved into different sounds with experimenting with extreme metal and then industrial
Right.
metal. Uh, Now kind of fused the whole metal and agrotech or dark electro thing together, and
Yeah.
mainly what DOA is now.
Yeah. Because if I'm remembering correctly, like when you first started Dawn of Ashes, like it wasn't really meant to be just like one genre. Like I think it started out that way, but then you meant it to evolve into something like it was more meant to be like an idea, but it wasn't really meant to really have like one distinct sound to it.
I feel like I always wanted to be in a professional metal band, and so I always kind of brought
Right.
that on stage and in the music. I mean, even with the earlier albums, the agrotech albums, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
uh, it was still very heavily influenced by metal
Yeah.
and with the energy that was brought on stage and just the way that I would write the music. Um, and even with the album that just came out, I mean, it's still, even if
Hmm.
it's electronic, still has the aggression
Yes.
that's inspired from any type of aggressive type of music.
Yeah. Because I listened to that video you just put out just recently, and you were talking like the new album, like it's pretty much like the evolved form of what Dawn of Ashes was always meant to be. Like, and I agree with that. Like, I feel after listening to the album, like I feel like you're at that level now where you're able to like just have the two mesh, and
Right.
it makes it like more like it definitely makes it more aggressive.
Yeah, I not only musically, but I feel lyrically
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
just on a personal level, I've grown and I've matured. And I mean, the stuff that I wrote about uh, with the first two albums, I mean, I was in my, early 20s, and um, I just feel like where my headspace now is compared to different eras of my life, I feel like there's more substance behind this album, and there's more growth. And even as a producer,
Hmm.
a lot of people were, wondering how much it's going. The latest album is going to sound like the original set albums,
Right.
and it's basically impossible to make it sound like the original.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because I mean, one album came out in 2005, and then the other one came out in 2007. I
Right.
mean, I progressed as a musician and as a music producer,
Hmm.
and it's also, different places in my life. My place where I am in my life now, and mentally, is not the same place that I was back then. So I just
Yeah.
feel like I can try as hard as I can to make
Hmm.
something sound like that, but it's never going to sound like that.
Right. And I think that's one thing people don't understand. Like, most average fans are not understand that. Like, as much as they want that back, they're not going to get that. I mean, they're going to get it back, but it's not going to be in the same way that it was back before. Like,
I mean, I could get it back, right? But I
right.
mean, a lot of stuff that people liked about it, I mean, was not to say it was poorly produced, but the production of it wasn't as
Hmm.
good as I do now. I mean, you know, I, people talk about the Sacred Fever demo that I did back in 2004 or whatever. I
Yeah.
think the first Sacred Fever came out in 2003, and I didn't know shit about producing. I mean, I was literally kind of just starting out,
Hmm.
really learning how to produce on a DAW and using MIDI and everything like that. And
Right.
I mean, even the music, the music gear I use now is so much different than I used
Hmm.
back then. So I just feel like, sure, I, and it's almost hard to even classify this latest album as agrotech because
Right.
for one, I didn't even ever consider Dawn of Ashes back then being that name. That was kind of a name that just came
Hmm.
out of nowhere.
Right.
There's few artists that came out, and then people just started calling us agrotech.
Hmm.
And the only reason I use that name is that I feel like that's what people can identify our old sound with,
Right.
even though I don't feel this album is fully that sound, but it
Hmm.
definitely falls under that category versus anything else that I've done.
Yeah. And a lot of your music, even from back then, like another influence you brought in is a horror influence. Like a lot of your albums you have different sound clips from movies, which I definitely appreciate that. Like even the
Yeah, but
most
even
newest
that,
one.
I think that has even evolved. Like when I
Hmm.
wrote in the Acts of Violence and the Crypt Injection, it was like these not really thought out lyrics. It's just very I don't know how to describe it. It was almost fantasy based versus what I'm
Hmm.
talking about
Right.
in the latest three albums that I wrote, because these
Hmm.
are actually real life topics. And
Yes.
so I think I mentioned that I feel like Dawn of Ashes is now on the psychological horror
Hmm.
element,
Yeah.
where the real horror is dealing with all the ugliness inside ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, because your last three albums, you know, I think you actually hit on that in your latest video too. Like your last three albums, for all intents and purposes, they were concept albums. They were all dealing
Right.
with, all three were dealing with different mental health issues.
Right. And I mentioned that Infecting the Scars deals with basically poisoning yourself with
Hmm.
rage and anger. And it just goes down that pathway of what it feels like to experience intense, uncontrollable anger. And
Yeah.
for myself, I've always struggled with that. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah,
Yeah, it's it. Yeah, and you exactly what you were saying. Like you need some sort of healthy outlet for it, and yeah, 9 times out of 10, then that's going to come out in the music.
right.
And there's going to be people out there who are going to like who are going to you know link into that, and that's going to be also their expression for getting their own rage out or whatever feelings that they're having.
Yeah, I mean that's when it comes to this type of music or metal or hardcore or any of that type of stuff. The music and the performing and the shows is a good outlet for
Mm-hmm.
releasing any of these types of emotions that people struggle
Yes.
with. It's a safe place to go, and I never thought of Dawn of Ashes really having a positive message
Right.
because it's not really a positive message in the new album.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of dealing with these
Mm-hmm.
topics. I've dealt with a lot of these topics, and it's sometimes just so unbearable that I
Right.
just need to write it down or kind of purge it into the music.
Yeah. Because yeah, I feel like yeah, if anybody's looking for Dawn of Ashes for positive, like for positivity, they're looking in the wrong place. But it's more so getting the it noticed that this stuff is out there. These are these are actually real things that people are dealing with. Um, and just making it it's more so like making it known about.
Right. Yeah, and I have these other projects, these ambient,
Yes,
dark ambient projects.
I was gonna talk about that. Yeah, if you want to actually talk about that now, because you've been doing these dark ambient projects, and that's when you first started doing that. I think that's when you first like you've been doing a story element before, but that's when you really started really doing it more with the story element.
Yeah, I feel like even writing, kind of perfecting the dark ambient um, realm, that it's actually helped me with my writing in Dawn of
Mm-hmm.
Ashes. But they're just so bipolar opposite that Dawn of
Right.
Ashes is it's my chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and the ambient stuff is my tranquility and uh, you know sanctuary, a peaceful place.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard for me to even kind of look at Dawn of Ashes and jump into it and consume myself with all the shit. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I wrote the first one, the Scars of the Broken, and I was just like, I can't do this.
I
You know,
remember
it's like
that. Yeah.
it's these topics that I just really don't want to kind of subject myself to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need another outlet. I need something that kind of brings me
Yes.
more peace and more tranquility. And sometimes I like writing the ambient stuff more than like writing the Dawn of Ashes stuff. I mean, I really enjoy writing this latest album.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it made me fall back in love with electronic music, and
Okay.
I feel like for someone who loves synthesizers and modular gear, that it helped me with coming to acceptance of being okay with writing another album like this, because for the longest time
Right.
I was like, fuck no, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
writing. I'm over that shit. I'm done with it.
Right.
But there was reasons why, and I haven't really mentioned a lot, but I remember there was an era and I think it was right after the Crypt Injection one came out,
Okay.
and there was this just a series of or a line of various bands that came out after that time, and it was just this like uh cyber goth, like
Mm-hmm.
super. I don't know how to explain it, but I was just like so fucking over the scene. I was like, it
Yeah.
just didn't like any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of abandoned it because I was just kind of over it.
Right.
But then, and so that's why for the longest time people were like, oh, you know, we want you to write another Agrotech album again, and I was like, fuck no, I'm not doing that shit. I'm over
Mm-hmm.
that. But then I wrote the Bornless Fire album that came out where I kind of brought some of that back, and then
Right.
with the Dawn of Ashes albums after that, I started bringing that sound back into the
Mm-hmm.
metal. And I think it was before I wrote the latest album, The Infecting the Scars, I was like, I wonder what it'd be like to write just a pure Agrotech album again. And if I'm gonna do
Right.
it, it's gonna be something
Just knit to the bit.
that's so fucking different in,
Mm-hmm.
not to say like I wrote the most unique album out there because
Right.
I know it's not the most unique album, but I definitely feel like it's something different
Yes.
than what everybody else is writing because I don't feel like there's really. I'm not saying that scene is dead or anything, but I don't
Right.
really. I don't know. I felt like I needed to resurrect something that would be
Mm-hmm.
close to what I did with those two albums, but I wanted to be completely different, and I wanted it to really shine with the maturity of the sound versus like
Right.
completely trying to replicate what I did.
Yeah. And like when it, like okay, let's jump into like void stasis. When you first started at, and then you were writing the stories to go along with each song, which I actually appreciate when you were doing that because like yeah, like you can actually like it really helped like an average listener can actually like listen to the songs, they have the story to go with them, and they can build a universe in their own head.
Right.
So what started you on that idea? Like when did you first start like okay, I want to do this. I want to write this music. I want to write, what inspired the stories?
Um, well, my first attempt with Dark Ambient was an album that I wrote back in 2010, I believe. It was,
Yeah, that was like something of, yeah, I remember that one like vaguely.
and I mean, to me, it's very amateur sounding compared to what I can do now. But a lot of people seem to liked it, and I would constantly get messages about if I was going to write another ambient album.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept saying that I have to be in the right mindset to write another album. And I think I was on tour with Dissector. This was like 2019, I think.
Okay.
And we were just talking about modular gear and Eurorack modular gear. And I think I brought up the topic of that I wanted to do an ambient album. And I think I was playing Destiny 2, the game, and
Okay.
I came up with Void Stasis because it was, I know that's fucking completely nerdy, but you have these different powers in
Right.
Destiny 2, and two of them are Void and Stasis, and so I came up with that name,
Okay.
and and I don't remember. I think I was talking to my friend Marie because she was we were kind of nerding out over modular gear,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I brought it up about that I wanted to do this ambient, project, and I asked her if she wanted to be involved. So we started writing some stuff. And then randomly, I was talking to Scott from Dissector, and he ended up coming aboard. And the writing process behind the first Voices sound was just so unique. I mean, it was so
Mm-hmm.
different, but it was so much fun. And I loved it and enjoyed it. It was something different. It was so different than what I do in Dawn of Ashes. There was just absolutely no structure to it. There was no
Right.
pressure. I didn't have a label breathing down my neck. Um, it was just fun. It was fun, just
Right.
fun with modular gear. And so yeah, we ended up getting signed to Cryo Chamber.
Right. That was awesome.
Yeah, and then we wrote the second album, which had more structure. So we actually were like, okay, we have a sound.
Mm-hmm.
We actually um, perfected the actual dark ambient sound, and then I started writing my own stuff for Cryo Chamber,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, the first album I did was very inspired by Blade Runner and Cyberpunk.
Right.
And, uh, and then everything now that I've been doing for Dark Ambient just has my own sound in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that sound kind of drifted over to Dawn of Ashes, some of the
I.
stuff that I did.
Mm-hmm.
Someone actually pointed it out. They were listening to my Dark Ambient stuff. They're like, I hear the Dawn of Ashes stuff in the stuff that you write with the ambient stuff. And I feel like that's what makes my ambient stuff more unique.
Yeah.
So it's a whole fucking realm that's just kind of put together and but not put together at the same time, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Right. It just comes together as it goes.
Yeah, I feel mentally they're kind of separated, but
Mm-hmm.
sonically and musically they're conjoined in some sort of way.
Yeah. Because I was actually gonna point that out because like I that's one thing I noticed is like when you were doing that dark ambient stuff, I did notice there was some carryover to what you were doing with Dawn of Ashes. Like you were especially incorporating like more of a story element to it. Um, so
Yeah.
like did it just like naturally just happen that way?
Um, I don't know. I just feel like when I go back to earlier Dawn of Ashes stuff, I mean, there's some stuff that I'm not even proud of what I wrote about, like
Mm,
lyrically, and that's just me growing as a human being.
right.
Just, just stuff like shock for shock, stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
just trying to piss people off for the sake of it. I'm just kind of over that. Like some
Yeah.
stuff to have more substance behind it. So yeah, I mean, the last three albums definitely had a story because they're actually authentic and real versus me trying to write these lyrics to see how fucking edgy I can be.
Right.
um and I feel like with a lot of bands I've kind of lost interest in that. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, where it's just kind of fake and bullshit.
Yeah. I think yeah, there's definitely a lot of that exists in the music scene. You just kind of be like, okay, I'm gonna be above that and just worry about myself and what I'm
It's
doing.
exactly kind of like, I like what I like, I write what I write,
Mm-hmm.
I stick to my side of the street, and
Yes.
what everybody else does is their fucking problem, not mine.
Mm. So when it came to like the newest album, like I'm sure you got a lot of feedback from people. Like, how do you feel about it personally? Do you feel this is the best, or do you feel like, all right, this could be a start of something more?
One of the things that was pointed out, and I think this happened with Reopening the Scars, the album before.
Mm-hmm.
It, it was such a mixing nightmare. Like for the mixing of the album was a fucking nightmare.
Oh,
And the
jeez.
album tossed around to so many people and so many
Mm-hmm.
people's hands got put on it.
Yep.
And I was so disappointed by some of the stuff. And I remember at the end of the album, someone goes, "Why are you having other people mix it? Why don't you do it yourself? Because
Mm-hmm.
you know how you want the sound to
Yes.
sound like." So I mixed this new album in Infecting the Scars. I mean it was all me besides maybe the mastering um, and they were right. I mean, I knew exactly how I wanted to sound. So when I hear the album, I there's always one Dawn of Ashes albums where I'll find something to be like, fuck, I wish that could have changed.
Yeah.
Just something. But this one album, I can listen to it from beginning to end and be like, I can't really hear anything that I would change. Maybe like really tiny things, but it's not
Right.
doesn't get to it like fucking drives me crazy.
Mm.
And I feel that there's no real fillers, in my opinion, on this album. That every single song has its own character and its own. Uh, I don't know. It all seems like it came together really well, and
Right.
I'm personally very happy with it.
Good. Glad to hear that. I definitely will say, I'm not just saying this either, but because I've pretty much, been there through the whole journey. Like right now, I feel like this is definitely, you know, the best you guys have ever been.
Well, I
It,
appreciate
it
it.
definitely just it's all like exactly. I feel like it's exactly where you guys need to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. It's sometimes hard to swallow that going on tour that I'm not going to have like a full, 6, 7 piece band that I
Mm.
can go out and it's, three of us
Yeah.
and um and just performing this style of music. And I mean even performing the original stuff because I was against even doing that for a while, performing
Right.
the old. Now we're doing tours strictly that sound,
Mm.
and so against that for so many years. But
Yeah.
I just said fuck it.
Which, speaking of going on tour, because most people don't realize that you have moved overseas now.
Right.
So there's definitely challenges because you're overseas and most of your bandmates are in the U.S. Yeah, or is that like when it comes to going on tour, like, how's that going to look like in the future?
So I have members in Europe, and then I have
Okay.
members in the United. I have two members that are always going to be with me in Dawn of Ashes, no matter where we go, and that's Behemoth
Mm.
and Chris Souls.
Okay.
Those are two that are always going to be there. So it really doesn't matter where they're at. I mean, if we have a tour in the U.S., it's just flying me out there, and if it's in
Hmm.
Europe, it's just two of them out here. So that's basically the plan.
So so is there any news that you can share with us about any news you can share about an upcoming tour planned or anything you can share?
I mean, we're working on things right now. I mean, we're doing festivals and but no major tour set
Mm.
yet. Yeah, it's being worked on right now. Right now, we're just doing 2 dates in Mexico, and then we're playing a festival in Finland,
Okay.
and then everything else we're still working on.
Okay. And jumping right off of that, so I think you got a couple of new projects that you're working on. Anything you can share about that?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I just released the last Void Stasis album, and
Mm-hmm.
then my solo album, and then I have another ambient album that's coming out under another name that no one knows about yet. I just finished another solo album with a collaboration from another dark ambient artist that will
Nice.
be released later on this year. Besides that, I'm releasing my own singles
Okay.
under not under a label, just releasing singles, and just I'm just writing and writing and writing.
Yeah. I think you said even mentioned about a video game score, maybe video game scores.
Yeah, I can't really mention
Okay.
the game name, but yeah, I've been working on a video game pretty recently. So
So definitely you'll be keeping yourself busy.
yeah, definitely.
All right. Anything else you want to share? You want to tell people where to find you?
Do you have any more questions?
Nothing else I can think of at the moment. I think we pretty much covered everything.
Okay. Well, perfect.
All right. Well, I do appreciate your time. This has been Kristof Bathory of Dawn of Ashes. Definitely check out the new album. It's on Bandcamp, Spotify. Um, definitely check it out. You know, to keep an eye out for his other things he has going on. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Of course.
All right. We're going to end here.